In the very olden time, there lived a semi-barbaric king whose ideas, though somewhat polished and sharpened by the progressive influence of distant Latin neighbors, were still large, florid, and untrammeled. He was a man of exuberant fancy, and withal of an authority so irresistible that at his will he turned his varied fancies into facts. He was greatly given to self-communing, and when he and himself agreed upon anything, the thing was done. When every member of his domestic and political systems moved smoothly in its appointed course, his nature was bland and genial. But whenever there was a little hitch, he was blander and more genial still. For nothing pleased him so much as to make the crooked straight and crush down uneven places. Among the borrowed notions by which his barbarism had become semified was that of the public arena, in which, by exhibitions of manly and beastly valor, the minds of his subjects were refined and cultured. But even here, the exuberant and barbaric fancy of the king asserted itself. This vast amphitheater, with its encircling galleries and its mysterious vaults, was an agent of poetic justice, in which crime was punished or virtue rewarded, all by the impartial hand of chance. When a subject was accused of a crime of sufficient importance, the king appointed a day on which the fate of the accused would be decided in the public arena. When all the people had assembled in the galleries, the king, surrounded by his court, sat high up on his throne of royal state on one side of the arena. He gave a signal, and a door beneath him opened. The accused subject stepped out into the amphitheater. Directly opposite him, on the other side of the arena, were two doors, exactly alike and side by side. It was the duty and privilege of the person on trial to walk directly to these doors and open one of them. He could open either door he pleased. Behind one of those doors sat a lady, the most suitable to his years and station that His Majesty could select. Behind the other crouched a tiger, the fiercest and most cruel that could be procured. If he opened the door with the lady, he was instantly married to her. If he opened the other door, the tiger sprang upon him and tore him to pieces as a punishment for his guilt. The decisions of this tribunal were not only fair, they were positively determinate. There was no escape from the judgment of the king's arena. This semi-barbaric king had a daughter as blooming as his most florid fancies, and with a soul as fervent and imperious as his own. Among his courtiers was a young man of fine bearing, who had dared to love the princess. She loved him with an ardor that had enough of barbarism in it to make it exceedingly warm and strong. This love affair moved on happily for many months, until one day the king happened to discover its existence. He did not hesitate, nor waver in regard to his duty. The youth was immediately cast into prison, and a day was appointed for his trial in the king's arena. Of course, everybody knew that the deed with which the young man stood charged had been done. He had loved the princess, and neither he, she, nor anyone else thought of denying it. But the king would not think of allowing any fact of this kind to interfere with the workings of his tribunal. The tiger cages were searched for the most savage beast, and the ranks of maidens were surveyed for the young woman most suitable to be the bride of a young man who, before he was condemned, had the honor of being beloved by the princess. The appointed day arrived. From far and near, the people gathered and thronged the great galleries of the arena. The king and his court were in their places, opposite those two fateful doors, so terrible in their similarity. All was ready. The signal was given. A door opened, and the lover of the princess walked into the arena. Tall, beautiful, and fair, he appeared. Half the audience had not known so grand a youth had lived among them. As the young man advanced into the arena, he turned toward the row where sat the princess. For he had, of course, known she would be there. She had spent days and nights in discovering the secret of the doors. She possessed influence and power to that degree. And not only had she discovered in which room stood the tiger and in which waited the lady, she had found out who the lady was. It was one of the fairest and loveliest of the damsels of the court. The princess hated her. She had seen, or imagined she had seen, the young woman glancing at and admiring her lover. The girl was lovely. The princess was filled with the bitterest of jealousy, an emotion made fiercer by its semi-barbaric nature. Now and then she had seen them talking together, that fair girl and her lover. Perhaps it was only for a moment, but much can be said in a moment. How often had the princess seen that look, that smile? And now, should the girl have the lover whom she, the princess, loved so dearly? How her soul had burned in agony as she contemplated this possibility. But who knows her better than herself? She had considered every point. She had weighed the matter long and carefully, late into many nights. Her decision had been formed. Her mind was made up. And yet, as the young man looked up at her, it was not for nothing that he had loved a princess with so fine and subtle a nature. With a slight, quick movement of her hand, imperceptible to all but him, she indicated the door on the right. Her lover turned, and with a firm and rapid step he walked across the arena and opened the door on the right. Now, the point of the story is this. Did the tiger come out of that door, or did the lady? The more we reflect upon this question, the harder it is to answer. It involves a study of the human heart. Think of it, not as if the decision of the question depended upon yourself, but upon that hot-blooded, semi-barbaric princess, her soul at a white heat beneath the combined fires of despair and jealousy. She had lost him, but who should have him? How often, in her waking hours and in her dreams, had she started in wild horror and covered her face with her hands, as she thought of her lover opening the door on the other side of which crouched the cruel tiger, and how in her grievous reveries had she gnashed her teeth and torn her hair when she saw his start of rapturous delight as he opened the door to the lady. How her soul had burned in agony when she had seen him rush to meet that woman with her flushing cheek and sparkling eye of triumph. Would it not be better for him to die at once? To go to wait for her in the blessed regions of semi-barbaric futurity? And yet, that awful tiger, those shrieks, that blood, her decision had been made. And so I leave it with all of you. Which came out of the open door, the lady or